Hey everyone, I hope you are having a wonderful day so far. I am just dropping this special little clip into all the episodes. So, no matter what episode you're listening to, this is actually pretty current as of July 2024. I wanted to come on here and just say a big thank you to Earworthy because the Life Shift podcast was just named the best overall podcast of the year in the first Earworthy Independent Podcast Awards. And you've probably seen some articles written about the Life Shift podcast before, written by Earworthy. And now he is launching from his online publication, he is launching these yearly winners of independent podcast awards. And these are specifically for indie podcasters. We are those that wear all the hats. We create the show. Some people write the show. We're producers, sound engineers. We troubleshoot all the tech. We do any kind of research if we need to. We host the shows. We distribute the shows. We do all the things that relate to our shows because we love it. And it's so nice to see my name in a list with some other amazing podcasts like Multispective, which won Best Life Lessons Podcast. Salad with a Side of Fries won Best Health Podcast. Bippity Boppity Business won Best Business Advice Podcast. And there are so many more. And so I just want to come on here and say thank you to Earworthy for not only doing these awards every year and just honoring some of us indie podcasters that sometimes feel like we're just shouting into the void, but we're not. We're just doing what brings us joy, and hopefully through that work it brings other people joy. In my case, for the Life Shift, I hope that each episode finds the ears that needed to hear it the most so that they feel a little less alone in their circumstance. But also, Earworthy writes all these amazing publications pretty much weekly, every week, every weekday, I should say, where he writes on Blogger, Medium, Substack, Tumblr, Vocal, Many Stories, and for other places. And he really just highlights the independent podcasters. So thank you, Frank, for everything you do with Earworthy and for recognizing all of us in the first Earworthy Independent Podcast Awards. If you'd like to read more, please head to medium.com/EAR hyphen WORTHY. Thanks again and enjoy this episode. I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with a new friend, Jenny Wood. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt. It's such a pleasure to be here.
We've been talking about having you on the show here for a while, and we're recording this way ahead of schedule, but there will be some cool stuff that Jenny will share with you about, what she's doing next in her career. But of course, she's here to talk about her life shift. And just so everyone is reminded, the Life Shift is we're trying to have these candid conversations about the pivotal moments that have changed people's lives forever. And I don't know if you know, Jenny, but I started this podcast as part of an assignment in my pandemic graduate degree.
I did not know that. Tell me more.
So during the pandemic, when we were kind of all in that lockdown period, I was really bored. And so I needed something to do. And I also felt like my brain was turning a little bit to mush.
Understandable, like many of us in that initial pandemic phase.
Exactly. And I got my MBA in 2004. So it had been a long time since I had been in school. And so I decided to do an online degree at the University of Florida in mass communication and public relations. And every semester I would take a class that scared me along with the core class. And the one that scared me last spring, or this past spring, was Art of Podcasting. We were only required to do a couple episodes that didn't have to go anywhere. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go big. And by the end of the class, it was launched. I had 8 already going. So here we are.
I love it. So you took the Art of Podcasting in a really productive way during the pandemic while I was binging on Netflix shows.
Well, I was also doing that, yes. And I actually released 13 coloring books during the pandemic on Amazon and all sorts of, I was really bored.
That
So
is so much fun. I love it. I'm actually joking. I was not just binging Netflix. I did something pretty cool during the pandemic too that we can probably talk about, which was launching a new program at Google where I work. So
that is amazing. Yeah, so this podcast episode is obviously not about me. It's about you. And what I love about this show so far and all these episodes we've talked about is really just drawing these through lines of the human experience. And your story was actually featured in like a New York Times article, which was super cool. And so before we get to the actual pivotal moment and kind of something that if it didn't happen, your life would probably be totally different, maybe you can just give us kind of who Jenny is right now and maybe a little backstory before we get to that pivotal moment.
sure, absolutely. And I know that I am the guest and the podcast is about me, as you just said, but I really want to know about those 17 coloring books that you created. I don't even know what that means. How do you make a coloring book? So maybe at some point in this conversation, you can tell me more about that. But I will follow your invitation to introduce myself. I am Jenny Wood. I am in Boulder, Colorado, where I live with my wonderful husband, who we will talk plenty about, and our two kids. My son is 7 and my daughter is almost 5. And we've been in Boulder for about 4 years. Before that, we were in Manhattan for a number of years. And I work at Google. I have an executive leadership role there in an operations team. And as a passion project, I also founded Google's Own Your Career program during the pandemic. So that was my equivalent of launching a podcast. I launched a program that just started spreading like wildfire. The goal of the program is to help Google employees increase their influence and impact in their current role and or land their next role. And it's a series of 3 things. It's a 60-minute training, a biweekly email tip newsletter, and then these 6 essentially PDF one-sheeters on things like stakeholder management tips, influence tips, personal brand tips, networking, mentoring, sponsorship tips. And it is something I'm just so incredibly proud of. And that keeps me going. We now have a significant portion of the company that's leveraging the program, tens of thousands of people, and it's just grown super, super fast. And then outside of work, I like to hike every day. I live right at the base of a couple of wonderful hiking trails here in Boulder.
Yeah, you do.
And I am a pilot, so I have my pilot's license and I fly recreationally just for fun. I'm an avid tap dancer and love all things musical theater. So when I was living in Manhattan, I lived right by Theater District and would go to shows as often as I could. And like to snowboard, and I have varied hobbies. I have a rich life.
And you're not busy at all, it seems. You're just kind of just laying back watching that Netflix, like you said.
I know that was such a false start, such an inauthentic, like not at all me. I actually do not watch a lot of TV. Oh, and I'm writing a book. Because of the work I started at Google, the career development initiative. Some agents in New York City became interested in that. And then as a result, separate from my work at Google now, I'm writing a book essentially on how to help people get what they want. And that we will talk about today, I'm sure, because that was something that happened in this subway story about how I met my husband. But I'm writing a book. We're just working on the website now so that people can follow along. The website is itsjennywood.com, no apostrophe. Itsjennywood.com. You can head there and download a free guide on 5 things that can help you thrive professionally or personally, quite frankly.
And that's where they can find out more about the progress of your book and such. Do you have an anticipated finish date or still working on that?
It'll be a couple years before it comes out. Books take a long time to go from ideation to ready for sale. So it's definitely coming out, but no launch date quite yet.
Got it. Well, and I asked that too because I'm on the ignorant side and did my own publishing of those coloring books on Amazon myself. And so it was very simple to just create what I needed to and put out whatever I want. I actually wrote a story about my grandmother's passing and after the grief of that and kind of whatever that journey was. And I published that on Amazon too, just because I could. I don't think anyone would have picked it up, but I love that you're so varied in your background too. Like what you do, like for fun? How do you pick and choose what you're going to do that day?
A mentor of mine at Google had a great line. Her name is Julie Kruger. She's this wonderful, inspiring woman at Google. And Julie said, with respect to women being told, you can't have it all, right? Are you going to choose family? Are you going to choose work? Her rebuttal to that is you can have it all, just not all at the same time. So I think that applies to my hobbies too. I can have them all, but not all at the same time. So for example, when I was living in Manhattan, I tap danced twice a week in these incredible tap studios with the best of the best and the most incredible instructors in the world. And now I'm in Boulder and we don't exactly have the same access to that type of talent. So now I hike regularly. When I was in Ann Arbor getting my pilot's license, I flew 3 or 4 times a week. I now have 2 small children, and it's a huge time investment to pre-flight, to fly, and then to post-flight. It could be 3 to 4 hours, including driving to the airport and driving home. So I'd much rather spend that time playing Monster Chase with my kids in the basement, which is basically me running around the basement trying to catch them, or snuggling with them at bedtime reading stories. So when it comes to hobbies, I can have them all, just not all at the same time. So these days it's hiking and playing with my kids as opposed to flying and tap dancing regularly.
Okay. Well, you still have those options, which is nice. I actually used to live in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, so I'm familiar with the scenery and how beautiful it is and the ability to just go out and hike for a short amount of time or long.
Totally.
I've only been to Boulder once, though.
Come back.
Just once. It's so beautiful there.
It's amazing.
All right, so why don't we get into your pivotal moment? I think it's super fun and no doubt has probably changed a lot of the way that you approach life now because of the results of it. So maybe give us a little bit of hint of what was happening and then what actually happened.
Yeah. So to set the stage, I lived in New York City. I moved there in 2008, and I had been there for about 3 or 4 years at the time. And I was on a mission to find my husband. I was working at Google. I've been at Google for almost 16 years. So I'd been at Google already for a couple of years. And I, first of all, loved living in the city. I mentioned I loved the shows. I loved the energy. I loved the bop, bop, bop of the conversation. I loved the weird and wacky things you saw walking down the street. I think I saw more weirdness in 3 blocks in Manhattan than I see in 3 months in Boulder, but that's okay. It's trade-offs. I get really good hiking here that I don't get there. So everything is trade-offs. So I loved so much about the city. And one thing I loved in particular was all of the dating opportunities. And I went on a lot of dates. And I mean a lot of dates. So much so that in my sister's wedding speech, as my maid of honor, she joked about how I had a spreadsheet for all the dates I went on.
Did.
And I did. She joked, but it was accurate. And that I once went on 5 dates in 24 hours. I think it was
impressive.
Impressive is very generous, Matt. Thank you. Thank you. I think there are other adjectives that could fit, but sure, we'll go with impressive. Driven, on a mission.
You knew what you wanted.
I knew what I wanted.
Did you have a checklist?
It's funny. That's before I was a pilot. So had I been a pilot already, I might have had a checklist. I'm sure I had some mental checklist. I think everybody does when they're dating, right? They've got kind of their preferences. I wanted someone, what was on my checklist? Kind, smart, funny, and someone with potential to challenge me, to be a good conversationalist, those kinds of things, to make sure that life always stayed interesting. And so that's painting a picture of my scene at the time.
You were busy. Still.
I was busy. Yeah, I was. I never let the grass grow under my feet. And I mentioned the book that I'm writing. It is a lot about going after what you want, and this is a great example of doing that. So what happened that day was I was riding the subway home from work from Chelsea in Manhattan to the Upper West Side where I lived. on 74th and Central Park West in a beautiful, beautiful building overlooking all these brownstones. It was very Carrie Bradshaw, Sex in the City. And I had just finished a cappella rehearsal. That was one thing I didn't mention is I love to sing. So Google New York had an a cappella group called, wait for it, Scalability. Google's all about scale, okay. And a cappella groups are all about puns.
Hey,
so that was the marriage. And I'm riding the subway. It's a packed train. And standing about 30 feet away from where I was sitting was this really good-looking guy. And I'm not a shy person, but it seemed a little too much, even for me, to go up to this guy on a packed train and strike up a conversation with him, because everybody would have been watching me likely get shot down because, that just seems like the more likely outcome of that scenario. So I sat there thinking, where's he going? Where's he coming from? Where does he live? What does he do? What's he all about?
Wow.
And just kind of enjoying, I was feeling gratitude to the city of New York, gratitude to Manhattan for putting so many good-looking people on that island. I was just feeling gracious, or grateful. So I said to myself, okay, I'm pretty taken by this guy. If he gets off at my stop, which was 72nd Street, then I'll talk to him. And if not, then c'est la vie. So the next stop comes, which is 57th Street. And he gets off the train. And I said, oh no. And I said to myself, okay, I guess that's the universe telling me it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
All the people.
Like most of us would do.
Right. That is the normal sane thing to think and the normal sane way to act in this scenario. So.
And here comes the pivotal moment.
All the people who were leaving got off the train. All the new people got on the train. The doors are literally closing. I am not exaggerating for effect. The doors are literally closing. And I had just said previously, I guess that's the universe telling me it wasn't meant to be. And then I said, no, screw the universe. And I ran off the train.
Wow.
Like, I don't know that I had to pry the doors open to get off, but if I had I waited a nanosecond longer, I would have been shut in the doors. Right. Like the doors were literally closing.
Yeah.
I ran to catch up.
57th Street.
So now I'm at 57th Street where I do not live. I ran to catch up with him. It was a blizzard. So I had my big puffy coat on, my winter hat. I took off my hat. My hair was all disheveled, I'm sure. So I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you. And he said, that's okay. You seem nice. And I said, then, you're wearing gloves, so I can't tell if you're wearing a wedding ring, but you were on my subway and I thought you were cute. Any chance I could give you my business card? And he said, hi, I'm John. And I said, is that Jon or John? Mind you, I'd spent a lot of time on JDate, so what I was really doing was fishing for, is that the Jewish way to spell it or the non-Jewish way to spell it? And he said, and
plus you were getting information for your spreadsheet.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I have to enter you in column A, first name, last name. How do I spell this? Right, exactly, Matt. And this is what just floored me. He said, oh, it's Jon, the Jewish way. And I was like, ha ha, the sky's opening up. And it was like, I couldn't believe he had said that. And so I said, well, I'm Jenny, the Jewish way. Kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There's no Jewish way or non-Jewish way to spell Jenny. But I said it, to sort of acknowledge that we were both kind of fishing. And the rest is history. I gave him my business card. He called. We went out on our first date. Within that week, I knew immediately that this was the guy. Immediately.
Yeah.
Or I knew that this was something.
You had all that practice.
I had so much practice. Practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. Yeah. I was well trained. And the rest is history.
Yeah. I wonder if as you were sitting there kind of daydreaming or night dreaming of what could be with this gentleman across the train, if all those prior dates and your spreadsheet of like what was good, what was not good, where I was, do you think like all of that was colliding at once to make you be like, this is my shot? What do you think made you jump off that train?
Something very different. What made me jump off the train was my inclination to take risks, my fear of uncertainty, and my being a data person that kind of believes it's just a numbers game. So let me unpack each of those. So first, I said my inclination to take risks. I am a risk taker. I fly airplanes. I like skydiving. I like taking risks at work. And I think that I enjoy that feeling of adrenaline. The second one was my discomfort with uncertainty. I'd much rather have an answer, even if that answer is no, than sit wondering. Because like there was so much higher of a probability that he would have said, sorry, I'm married. But like that's still win-win. I have my answer. I don't have to wonder. And he gets to go home to his wife and kids and be like, I still got it, honey. So like then he feels great. It's a compliment to him. And I know that it's not him that I'm going to marry. I'd so much rather have a no than an unknown. So given the option of staying on that subway and having the unknown, or potentially having a no, or even in this case, a yes, those two options were so much better to me than the option of staying and not knowing on the subway. And then third, the final piece I mentioned was the just being a data-driven person, or it's a numbers game. I'm not saying that I regularly chased men off the subway. I had never done it before. But I mentioned I went on a ton of dates. I mentioned that I once went on 5 dates in 24 hours. So I figure, what does my father say? Something like even an unlucky squirrel catches a nut every once in a while, or so. I think I'm butchering that phrase, but basically like you take enough shots, some go in. So it was a little bit of that too. So it was less of like, this is fate. This is the universe aligning us. This is everything colliding that I've ever learned or ever, wanted or desired. It was just a moment in time where I made a decision to optimize for the moment without knowing the outcome, but knowing that I wanted the data.
It's interesting too, because as you were telling that, part of me thinks like being a risk taker almost negates the second piece of always wanting like an answer. And I'm similar too. Like I want to take a risk, but I also want to take like an educated risk, like that I know these are the potential responses. So that's probably how that connected for you, right? It was either a yes or a no. So here's my risk.
Yeah. I mean, there's the other risk of safety, where some women would say, that's insane. What if he was a murderer? But I'm a very practical person. First of all, he didn't look like a murderer. So I went through my murderer checklist, and he didn't check enough of the boxes to scare me.
Perfect.
He looked like a really nice guy. He looked sincere. He looked humble. He looked thoughtful. He looked smart. He looked genuine. He looked attractive. I mean, let's not overlook that. That is what drove this whole thing, right? Like, talk about human instinct.
Started it.
That's what started it. He is a very good-looking guy. Still is to this day. I think he's maybe even gotten better looking with age.
That happens to the best of us.
Right? Exactly. you know how that goes. So, yeah, I think it was just a moment in time where I was calculating the risk of, this guy's not going to murder me. Plus, there are about 1,000 other people surrounding us right now in this subway station as we walk up the stairs. So let's be practical. We never locked our house growing up. We always said, let's keep our house unlocked. I grew up in a suburb of Denver, Colorado. And my mom always said, if we lock our house, nobody can come in. If we keep it unlocked, someone might bring us a pie or a plant. So like we literally didn't, we might have locked it at night, but like we didn't lock our doors during the day.
Interesting. Yeah. I was also thinking as you were talking too, especially from where you are now in Boulder and Manhattan, the chances of you ever seeing him again were probably a lot smaller than you running into him in Boulder at the grocery store, right?
That's a good point. Manhattan is so anonymous. And I think that if it didn't go through my head in that moment, I'm sure it's something I had thought in other situations dating in Manhattan where I was maybe a little bit more bold than the average 20-year-old dating. I was 30 at the time when I met him. By the way, he was 25 at the time, which was a whole other layer.
Oh.
And he had just moved to Manhattan 6 months prior. He was not looking to get snatched up by Miss Jenny Illis at the time, now Jenny Wood. Little did he know.
Lucky
Little did
him.
he. Yeah, I guess. No, I think I'm a catch. I think we both did well in this situation. We did.
Do you think that okay, so I guess the question is double layered. Did you have moments like that before in your life in which you took something seemingly like so very spontaneous from the listener's side? It feels very like unplanned, let's go, and big good things happen from it? Or was this really that first time that something like that happened where you succeeded?
That is a very good question. And I'm thinking there's a little bit of each of those sides in me. There's the side that is very methodical, right? Think about the spreadsheet. When I am making a decision, it is a massive pro-con list, and I tend to be fairly indecisive, surprisingly. I was very decisive in that moment. But I do a lot of analysis on decisions I generally make, bordering on analysis paralysis. But I think there's this, so I think I am methodical in some ways, but maybe in some way this was part of being methodical, where it was almost like worst case scenario, it's one date we add to the spreadsheet, right?
Right.
And nothing comes of it. But so maybe it was just sort of like part of the, well, we're in dating mode. Here's an opportunity to meet somebody. Let's meet this person. It almost within the structured way that I was dating. But then on the other hand, in terms of spontaneity, I think of this time in high school where I was with my friends at TCBY. Did you have TCBY growing up? This country's best yogurt.
Country's best yogurt.
Yeah, exactly. Where you all would hang out after the movie, and it wasn't. Yeah, wasn't then, isn't now. And I think somebody dared me to stand up on a table and sing "My Country 'Tis of Thee" in this country's best yogurt, or the national anthem, or something like that. And I did it. Or I did it without them daring me. It might have been the latter. I think I did it without them daring me. And my friends were horrified. Horrified. They're like, why do we hang out with this girl? What is wrong with her? How is her brain wired this way? And now it's a joke. My longest friend from childhood, my oldest friend, Stephanie Korn at the time, now Stephanie Meerman, it just it became this running joke of like, yep, that's just you getting up on the table at TCBY. So I think maybe there was an element of lack of fear, or maybe a comfort in my own skin, or a confidence that I think there's a little bit of a confidence element. And I have imposter syndrome like the rest of us, and I can feel super insecure all the time, around different moments of the day. I'm not immune to that at all. But I do think I have this element of confidence, or just maybe like what's that book, The Subtle Art of Not, actually have it right here, by Mark Manson. I'm looking at it. I read it on the beach in Mexico 2 years ago. The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. And I think there's a little bit of that in me that put me, that had me sing out of nowhere at TCBY and had me jump off the train.
And you'd probably still do it now. But my question, to add a layer to that, and maybe this is just curious about your current way of operating, when you have to make a decision now, do you feel more confident in your decisions when you have shorter deadlines? In which, like, I'm trying to compare it to that subway where you had a deadline, like you literally had to make a choice on the spot. Do you do better with those nowadays, or ones that are long where you can analyze something to death?
Absolutely better with a shorter deadline. In fact, when John and I did get engaged after dating for 3-ish years, I wanted the world's shortest engagement possible. We were engaged for only 4 months, and I had a very specific reason. I just didn't want to do all this back and forth mentally of what color should the napkins be? Should the roses be calla lilies or irises? Should we have, breakfast for dinner or dinner for dinner? We had breakfast for dinner, as it turns out. I was just
That's my
aware.
favorite.
I know it's who doesn't love breakfast for dinner? I'm pretty self-aware and I know my limitations, of which there are plenty. I know my downfalls, of which there are plenty, and I do believe that shorter deadlines are always a good thing for me. Even this week, my husband and I were deciding, are we going to go to the mountains this weekend or should we stay home for this weekend? And I was like, John, let's just not drag it out. I just want to decide because I don't want decision fatigue on this. And let's just we go or we don't go. It's a long weekend. It's not a big deal. And we're staying. And I'm very happy about that. He just broke his clavicle mountain biking. So a little R&R is not a bad thing.
I could not get into mountain biking. I think there's something about what you're saying there about the deadlines that is helpful for any listener. And I think it's true of myself too. If I have a certain deadline that is shorter, I'm more likely to get started earlier on whatever that project may be and get it done actually before. If I have a long deadline, I often drag it out until the end, which is very weird to think, okay, I have a short amount of time and I get it done early, or I have a long amount of time and I wait till the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm similar. I think a lot of people are similar. I'm not even sure it's that counterintuitive. I think that a lot of people operate that way. There's that quote, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, although that might be a little bit of a tangent on what you're saying. This reminds me of one of the volunteers who works on the Own Your Career program at Google that I mentioned, this huge program that's used by tens of thousands of people at the company. It's all run by volunteers with the exception of one person who's more involved in it. And I just assume as a leader and as a manager that nobody wants a fire drill. I just assume that everybody wants at least a 5 business day turnaround on everything. So I have spent years trying to be mindful of never giving somebody something to do last minute. And then we had this offsite, virtual, on-site, home site, whatever you want to call it, for our program with the handful of us who work on it. And we talked about our working preferences. And this one person who does our data and analytics, she said, I work best when you G-chat me with something urgent and it's due in the next hour. And I was like, what? What? Are you joking? Or are you being sarcastic? Are you being serious? I did not believe her. But it was true. And I totally shifted the way we worked together and how I requested things of her. And I no longer emailed her things with a 5 business day turnaround. I just pinged her and said, hey, any chance you could pull this data in the next hour? And she's like, yep, I'm on it. And it blows my mind that we don't know people's preferences until we ask. And we should never assume that people are A, like us, or B, like what we think the norm is, or C, like everyone else. Everyone's totally individual. I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn, and I posted something 2 days ago about introverts versus extroverts. And the essence of the post was, if you're leading a meeting and you want to ask somebody to lead the 2023 strategy plan, which is a huge project, huge for the business, huge for someone's career, you have to honor the introverts and the extroverts in the room. And you're only honoring the extroverts if you say, raise your hand if you're interested in this project. I want to pick someone right now. But for the introverts in the room, a better approach as the manager in that room is, we have this big project called the 2023 strategy plan. Think about whether you might be interested in it and email me by Friday if you want to raise your hand for this project. So we don't want to assume that everyone is ready and able to raise their hand. We want to acknowledge people's individual preferences, like that person who said, just ping me, I'll get it done in the next hour, right? That's very different than I would have assumed. And we can apply that when we're leading meetings and not assuming that everybody can just raise their hand, that we should ask their preferences or know their preferences, or assume that everyone's different and that people have different ways they want to process requests before they get back to you and say yes or no.
Yeah, and I think that's important to realize too, just by listening to your story, because I think there's going to be a lot of people listening that are like, I would never, ever do that. And then there's probably going to be a good amount of people that be like, hell yeah, she did exactly what I would have done, right? And so what you just pointed out is that not everyone's like us, right? We need to respect the fact that people operate in different ways. And yes, if we have the same goal and we can work together and maybe compromise on both sides if we need to, that's what's important, is just understanding that the human experience, although it has a lot of commonalities, is not always the same.
100%. And that reminds me so much of what I'm doing some deep work and deep thinking about as I'm writing this book is who's the audience? Who was that New York Times article for? My hope would be that it inspires women everywhere to go after what they want. It inspires girls everywhere to ask the guy for their number as opposed to waiting for them to ask her. And the big question with the book is this for extroverts only? Is it for extroverts and introverts? It's going to be a lot about drive in the book, and how do you get you what you want essentially, and how do you go above and beyond to make things happen for yourself, which was a perfect example that day. And the book will likely open with the subway story that I just told. But it is a big question. Who is the audience? Is it people who would do this naturally and they want that extra boost? Or is it people who would run the other way at a story like this and be like, that is never going to be me. That never would be me. And I have no interest in that. Is it for them so I can convince them to be a little bit more bold? Or is it already for kind of the go-getters, overachievers who go after what they want anyway? And I kind of give them my strategies and my tips and tricks to up their game even more.
I know we talked about it, and I know, well, in the interest of time, we'll wrap this up in just a second, but I mean, I almost feel like the audience, if you can pinpoint some of the characteristics of people that are strongly connected to imposter syndrome, I think those people are going to like this type of book, because they know in their head, right, that practically I could do all this and it makes sense, but how do I drive myself to actually do it? So I think that's something to consider as well. But typically I ask a question that won't make sense for this particular thing because of your drive and your practicality and your spontaneity and your risk taking and all these pieces. Typically I ask if you could go back and tell that person in that pivotal moment something. But I don't want to ask that. I want to ask if you could, or tell us, what do you think the best thing that you've learned about yourself by retelling this story to other people? Like, what have you learned to love more about yourself when you tell this story?
Yeah. It's funny that while you're saying this isn't the right question, for me, in this case, that you typically ask, an answer came to mind immediately. And my answer was, what would I say in that moment? And the thing that came to mind was, I love you. I would say to my now husband, I love you. It wouldn't have been appropriate to say it in that moment.
Yeah.
That probably wouldn't have worked out well for landing a first date. But
no, glad you did.
I saw you on the train. I love you. No, but like, just I love my husband, John. He's an amazing, amazing person. He's smart. He's funny. He's successful. He's kind. He's an amazing father. He's funny. He's sassy. He's sarcastic. He's the perfect balance for me. And I didn't know any of those things at the time. But now that I do know those things, 11, 12 years later, that's actually what I would have said walking out of that subway station, because it's how I feel now. So I think that is the question I'm going to answer. And it would simply be, I love you.
Yeah. What would you say to yourself?
What would I say?
Jumping off that train.
Yeah.
Run faster.
If I ran any faster, Matt, than I currently run, I think I would need.
You'd win the Olympics.
I just don't think it would be healthy. I go pretty fast. What would I say to myself? Good for you. Good for you, always going after what you want. Good for you not doing it the traditional way. Good for you for taking the risk that might result in someone saying no to you, but at least trying. Good to you for doing it differently. Good for you for being authentic. And good for you for just being who you are and doing what you want. And good for you for being practical. Because had he said no, who cares? Never going to see him again. So why not?
Why not is actually a perfect way to recap that. Like your whole story. Why not? Right? I love it.
And it's so funny you say that because my grandmother is still alive. She was a bridesmaid in my wedding, which is untraditional, but why not? When she was 88, she's now 97-ish. And she's an amazing woman who's just the matriarch of our family, Grandma Lila, and we all admire her. She doesn't have an unkind word for anybody. And she and my late grandfather, Grandpa Milt, were sailors. And when they went to buy a boat, my grandpa said to my grandma, "Should we buy this boat?" And she said, "Why not?" And the name of that boat, Matt, was the Why Not.
I love it.
Not spelled Knot.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, you need a little pun going on
Exactly.
on a boat name.
So I love
always.
how after this is the first time we're meeting, and I love how after speaking for just this short amount of time, you've been able to wrap up this conversation in the phrase "why not," which is such a special phrase for my family because of the name of my grandparents' boat.
I that's what I love about the Life Shift podcast. It's just like conversations. If we were sitting in a Manhattan coffee shop and just chatting, right? Like these are the things that we would talk about. And these are the things that we don't spend enough time talking about, right? I think so much of us get wrapped up in who we are as an employee, and we talk about work all the time, and we don't tell these human stories. So I appreciate you. You're so busy. I appreciate you taking even the short amount of time to be a part of this.
Well, this was not just the highlight of my day. It was the highlight of my week, Matt. And I do a lot of business podcasts. And this was such a breath of fresh air. I love doing those podcasts also, but the listeners don't know. But before the call, I sent you my kind of go-to notes of themes I could cover and themes I could talk about. And you wrote me back this morning and you're like, well, I kind of just want to have a conversation about the subway. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm here for that too. And let's do it. So this is just a really, really fun conversation. And I love what you're doing. I love the message. I love that you're having people think critically about their shifting moments and their pivotal moments and how that's shaped their life. So thank you for the opportunity to share my story with the world.
Well, I appreciate it. In the notes, everyone listening, we will be sharing the links to Jenny's website and where you can find out more about her book and the things that she's doing at Google, which you may or may not have heard of. It's just a small company.
Little startup.
And a little startup. I appreciate you, Jenny, and I hope we can stay connected. And when I'm in Boulder, I'll look you up.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'll go hiking or flying, or we'll play Monster Chase with my kids. Maybe not flying. Okay, thank you, Matt.
I'm into the monster chase and maybe some hiking. Is it the Flatirons?
The Flatirons, exactly. Yeah, we'll hike the Flatirons. Perfect. Okay, done.
Perfect. All right. It was great to have you here, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Matt. Have a great day.
I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information about how you can support the Life Shift podcast, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com. See you next time.